I have got only one question, and this is, I think, deliverance from cross. Sarzafullah Khan has said
Yes, that's
also,
right.
and then in other. I have got Urdu Bible in my hand and Anajil also, as you call us the people of the book. So, if we are the people of the book and we believe Anajil and all that, in John's Gospel it says that when Jesus was on the cross, you see, according to Jewish and according to Greek thinking, any person who is left on Sabbath day on the cross, you see, and the Sabbath has arrived,
That will violate the
yes,
right?
yes. They used to break the legs in order to find out whether that man is dead or alive. So the two persons who were with Jesus Christ on the cross of Calvary,
Their legs were broken.
their legs were broken because they never died.
But not that of Jesus Christ.
Not of Jesus Christ, because he died already. But according to Mirza, His Excellency
Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian.
Ghulam Ahmad Qadian, Jesus in India, he wrote a book.
He was delivered alive from the cross.
Alive from
That's
the
right.
So how it can be, while the book of the Gospel of Matthew, John and Mark and other, and then
even if you had not quoted the Gospels, I would readily agree with you that the legs of Jesus Christ were spared. They were not broken.
yes,
It's only a question of what you read in that.
yes. So he died on the cross.
No, he didn't. What I'm saying is that the whole scenario has to be rebuilt before you make a judgment. Not only what happened at the cross, but just before that and after that, and how was Jesus seen according to the same Gospels whose authority you are quoting. So when I build that scenario, then there will be more questions to be answered, this time by you, not by me. You see, I'm going to tell you, number one, what Jesus said, according to the same Bible, to a fellow member of the three who was hanging by the cross, that before the day is out, before 24 hours day is finished, I'll meet you in the paradise. Did he not? So where did he keep that promise? For 3 days and 3 nights, according to Christian ideology, he remained in hell for the sake of the sinful people to redeem them from their crimes. So what contradiction? And why, on the deathbed, everybody, even if he is a liar, tries to say a few things rightly, speak the truth. But what do you read of Jesus when he says, I'll meet you in the heaven, and he himself goes, Na'udhu-billah, we don't believe in that, goes to hell instead. And does not keep the promise anyway. But this is not the only broken promise if you read the Bible according to from the angle from which you are taught Bible. We read it, the same Bible, but from a different angle. And I'll tell you how. We read sense in the same. He promised that he would leave them and go to the lost sheep of Israel. Did he not? And the crucifixion took place, and he, according to the biblical, the gospel writers, he returned to heaven. Did he not? And were there any lost sheep of Israel in the heaven at that time? Were any herds of the house of Israel, herds of sheep or herds of people belonging, of course that is the meaning, lifted to the fourth heaven or fifth heaven or whatever it was, so that Jesus could keep his promise and go to them? Obviously not. Then he also promised them that no sign will be shown unto this generation of this and that, simple people, but the sign of Jonah, the prophet of the fish. Right?
Yes. 3 days and 3 nights.
Right. So was Jonah kept 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of the fish, alive or dead? If he was kept alive, if he was delivered from near death, then this is the sign which one expects of Jesus Christ to show. And then now come just close to the time where we find Jesus praying and also reminding his followers around that this is no time for sleep, get up and pray. And he was almost shedding tears of blood. And then he prayed to God that I don't want this. Please wave off this bitter cup from me. But still I submit that thine should be done. If you have decided that I must be sacrificed, then go ahead and do it. As far as I am concerned, I am praying to you not to make it happen as it's happening, it's about to happen. Now this description of the Bible takes away the spirit of deliberate sacrifice on the part of Jesus altogether. So that means that it was God who was forcibly slaughtering his son, and the son was all the time beseeching him not to do that. But at the same time he must have received an assurance from God that he will be saved from the ignoble death. Because the last cry of almost protest we hear while he was still upon the cross was Eli Eli lema sabachthani, which is a cry of surprise and disbelief. How could it happen that I am about to die? You know, that sort of thing. Have you abandoned me? Well, it seems God had promised him he would never abandon him. And what about the unkept promises of going to the house of lost sheep of Israel and in search of them and delivering the message to them? All that is finished. So there has to be some other meaning to it than what is ordinarily understood by the Christians. Now when he is taken down,
so his
when he is taken down, his legs are not broken, despite the fact that when his side was pierced, blood and water gushed out. And in the book Deliverance from Cross, published by the Ahmadiyya Community London, in which it is the coverage of a function held here, a sort of function in which Christians also participated. A well-known surgeon gives his evidence that the way we can rebuild the scenario of what happened at the time. Jesus' heart was here, the spear pierced his body from that side, and it could not have crossed the swollen watery pleura, which is the description of wet pleurisy in scientific term. And the evidence of blood and water gushing out speaks of a live phenomenon, not the phenomenon of death. So he says it is a positive evidence according to medical understanding that Jesus had not yet died by the time his side was pierced, but his heart was not damaged. So despite the signs of his life, his legs were spared. Why? Because there seems to be a sort of conspiracy between Joseph of Arimathea and the governor, Pilate of that area, Roman governor, who in fact was made to decide against Jesus Christ against his will, despite the dream of his wife. So what seems possible is that he willfully had appointed the time of crucifixion to be a time somewhere after the midday of Friday. He knew better than anybody else that according to the Jewish Christian, nobody would be permitted to hang beyond the hour of sunset. In fact, the bodies were taken down much before that. So there was every likelihood that while ordinarily the death took place within 3 days and nights, that is the time by which they were kept to remain hanging. They were kept remaining hanging, and despite that there was an additional precaution. A leg should be broken, lest if they were alive, they should die. So, in case of Jesus Christ, he hung upon the cross only for 3 or 4 hours, because according to the time of the year, the days had already started shortening. Now they were still short, and they were not yet elongated as we find in the summer. And before the sunset, the bodies of all these 3 were taken down. Although the legs of the criminals were broken, he was spared. Why? I believe out of special courtesy and out of some secret orders. While within 3 hours the death was not normal to have occurred. Again, when you read Bible, you'll be surprised to find this expression of wonder when Pilate was told by Joseph of Arimathea that he is dead, so hand over his corpse to us and we'll give it to the Christians for a decent burial. He said, already dead? No, he knew how long it took normally for people to die a slow, torturous death upon cross. But still, he permitted him to just take away. Then what happens? There are secret goings and comings to the sepulchre, and an ointment is prepared hurriedly, for which preparation was already made, which contains 12 ingredients, all curative agents. Now that ointment which was prepared by disciples or apostles, among all his followers, that was applied to his body. It contained myrrh, it contained some sulfur elements and other things which were known to be the curative agents of the time. And this prescription is still used by many an oriental healer in the East as the most effective ointment for wounds. So if he had already died, then there was no question why he should have been applied that ointment. And again, there was no question of any secrecy about his whereabouts. Because if he had once died and risen from the dead, then nobody could kill him again, could he? Then he was beyond the long arm of the Roman law and the long arm of the Jewish people. So that was the time for him to come public, to appear in the public openly and defy them and say, look here, I have risen from the dead. But what secrecy? He moves about from place to place under the cover of night. When particularly requested to go to the cities, to move during the daytime, he refuses. He said no. And when he appears before some of his disciples who are surprised by his presence, they think he is a ghost. See, the only evidence of his death we find in the matters as they are reported in the New Testament at the time of crucifixion is, then he gave up the ghost. These are the words you find written in the New Testament. That means he died. Who said it, we don't know. As if somebody was watching and from some distance he thought he had given up the ghost. So evidence is a bit weak and not entirely dependable. But when it is completely rejected by Jesus Christ himself, then even a flimsy evidence like such, nothing is left of that evidence at all. When his nature was suspected to be that of a ghost by his own followers, he said, no, I'm not a ghost. I'm the same Jesus Christ, in the same body. Come and touch me. Feel my wounds. Look here, look there. I'm not a ghost. And to prove the point beyond, that he had not risen into an ethereal form which apparently looked like human, he inquired from them if they had any food for him to share. They said, yes, we are eating bread and fish. He said, please give me some. And a portion of that was given to him. So the entire scenario is speaking of a Jesus who was in migration, in the process of migration. And this is a universal phenomenon proved from the Bible as well as from the Holy Quran, that all the brave prophets of Allah, although they defy all threats to their lives during the first phase of their ministry, when they are weakest, when they are told to migrate, they go into hiding. They do it quietly.
So,
like Moses did in the dead of the night, like Lot did, they all left their country in quiet and without the knowledge of the people around. So we believe that if Jesus was true, and we believe him to be true, then he must have kept his promise of going to the lost sheep of Israel. And if you want to trace him, you must trace the course of history which the Israelites took earlier in leaving the mainland and spreading over to other places. I'm talking of the first diaspora. And when you study the history of the spread of the Jews after Nebuchadnezzar invaded Judea, then you will find them to be moving away from the mainland towards Afghanistan and Kashmir. And that is the reason why people of Afghanistan and people of Kashmir have nothing in common with the people of the subcontinent India. Their features are different, their nomenclature is different, their complexion is different, their style of life is different. And one of the British, not the British but Western scholars I read, said if you want to rebuild the life pattern of the women at the time of Moses, go to the Dal Lake and see the Kashmiri women bringing their earthen pots to the lake and fill it and wash their clothes. This is exactly how they looked, and this is exactly how they lived. So the scholars are in no doubt about the origin of the people of Afghanistan and the people of Kashmir as belonging to the same Israelite stock. So if Jesus was true, and we believe he was true, he must have kept his promise. He must have gone in search of these lost tribes and delivered his mission to them and completed his ministry. So this is the scenario as we say it.
okay. Can I have a small...
Yes, please do.
One thing is this, that Jesus used to raise people from the dead, as Quran says. Isa Ruullah, Muhammad Rasulullah, Musa Kalimullah. So if he was used to raise people from the dead, and according to His Excellency, your perception about the logic and all that, which I agree completely, I don't disagree, I'm not on prejudice line.
I can see that.
Which I have seen a lot in Pakistan, 100% prejudice, so I'm not prejudiced, I'm not prejudging anything. But what I'm saying in the logic is this, if he was making the people raise from the dead, so did God raise him from the dead also?
You see,
when he died,
God could, of course.
God could have, yes.
Of course, but God could do anything and can do anything.
Yes, you have said that.
Yet on the authority of that, I can't say this is a horse. And if you disbelieve me, I would say, cannot God do that? And you will be absolutely nonplussed. You say, yes, God can do. What would be your answer? God can do anything. But the stranger it is, more powerful evidence there should be of its existence. So God can do everything, but if the evidence is counter to what people believe, then we cannot say because God can do it, so it must have happened. I am producing an evidence on the authority of Jesus himself, that he did not rise from the dead. It was a case of survival against all odds. as he himself had explained that his case would be like that of the Jonah. He survived against all odds and continued to survive. And he was resuscitated by God somehow. So was the case of Jesus Christ. But there are so many other things in that regard which I could quote. As far as his bringing the dead to life is concerned, we believe on the authority of Quranic metaphors and parables, the style of life, expression I mean, that he raised not the physically dead to life, but spiritually dead to life. And because he himself had said that he spoke in parables, people failed to understand him. And now when the Western scholars have reinvestigated all the incidents of his so-called bringing to life the dead people, they have found many loopholes in them. And they are no longer believed to be literal revival of the dead, even by the Christian scholars of this era. But I speak on the authority of the Quran. The Quran, when it uses a phrase, another verse of the Quran explains that phrase so that it may not mislead you. He speaks of Jesus bringing the dead to life and speaks of the Holy Prophet, that, O Prophet, invite them to yourself so that you can raise them from the dead. Tell them to come to you so that you raise them from the dead. So this phrase absolutely explains the spiritual jargon or terminology, that when it is said that the dead are raised, it is not meant that physically dead are raised. It's meaningless anyway.
But you believe that physically it can be raised by God?
Can be raised if God says so.
Okay.
But if there is a purpose and there is wisdom in that. If there is no purpose, no wisdom, then God doesn't do stupid things. But He can.
Thank you. Thank you very much.